My entitled family wants to take my house and give it to my brother, even though they kicked me out. This story was uploaded to my channel months ago. But recently, there have been new updates that might interest you. I will leave the Tim stamp in the description for you to skip the old bits. My entitled family wants to take my house and give it to my brother even though they kicked me out of their home because they had no space for me. I'll warn everyone here that this will be so long that I'm splitting it into 2 posts and including a TLDR for each. I also don't care who believes this, it's so wild that I don't blame anyone who calls BS. I won't argue about it, but this happened to me. I also really don't care if anyone in my family sees this. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but I'm also not going to reveal any details that include anyone who doesn't already know me and who I am. I'm a single man in my early 30s. I've got a brother who's 29, and he's already got 4 kids. He had his first at 22, the second followed a year later, then the third 2 years after that, and the fourth is the most recently born. A couple of months ago, his wife, S, and I did not get along, as she always liked to try to get a rise out of me by acting superior. Then turns into an extremely self-victimizing drama queen. If I retaliate against her in any way, she can cry instantly and put on a compelling show to get sympathy from just about anyone. My parents and brother adore her even though they know exactly how she is and don't care. She's beautiful. I'll give her that, but she's so awful that I could never be attracted to her. She also refuses to get any job even though she has a college degree, and my mother willingly helps with the kids all day. So their finances are entirely dependent on my brother. This also means they can't afford to live anywhere, but my parents' house and privacy are a bit of an issue with all of them under one roof in a 3-bedroom house built in the 60s. Growing up, my contact has been slow ever since leaving home. They didn't even show up for my high school graduation. But I didn't care from that point on. I usually only see my parents and brother on holidays, like the rest of the family. The start of the 2020 pandemic was not kind to me. I lost my job and couldn't renew the lease on the condo because my roommate lost his job, and neither of us could afford the place. On unemployment money, it was a rented 2-bedroom condo that I loved as the lease would do. But I had to keep my batteries charged so my refrigerator would stay cold. I had a small solar power bag for recharging my phone, but I didn't have anything like a generator, and generators are noisy and require fuel. So I did what I had to do. After months of living like that, I finally managed to get a new job. I had to move to the neighboring city to find a job that didn't involve retail. I worked retail while in college and promised myself never again, though I was nearly ready to be. I put it there as its little building. Just in case I wanted to use it again when I was fully settled in the house. I was dumb enough to brag about it on my Facebook. My family saw the post, and that's where this shit starts. After a few weeks, my parents, brother, and his family visited completely unannounced to tour my home. I didn't even give them my address, so how did they find out where I live? I still don't know. None of my friends has fessed up, and there is no pricing like I'll let him move. Just because they want it won't make it happen. I bought my house for myself, and I don't believe it's my fault he keeps having more kids and has to keep living with our parents because he can't afford to move out. Dan got as physically close to me as he could without actually touching me and said that I didn't deserve the house and he needed a better place for his family to live. I laughed back in his face and said it was total shit because I worked hard to be able to buy my house. Aren't some people able to explain why they make choices like child favoritism? So it's all they can do to try and stand by the child they backed, which is exactly what my parents tried to do, and I've practically destroyed their lives for it, not in the legal sense but more an emotional one. After I kicked my parents, brother and S out for trying to force me to hand over my new house to my brother, I immediately went to my social media and told the story to the whole family. It spread quickly, but I should always listen to what my mommy tells me. I felt rage just hearing those words and looking at her smug face. So I locked myself in my truck to call the cops right away. When they realized what I was doing, Sil started pounding on my window and yelling at me to stop and that I couldn't do this to her because she and Dan needed the house, and she cried, "Why can't you do this for Dan?" I responded with anger, "Dan. It's my damn house, not his." Then she threatened to key the side with her quietly for a minute, while my father spoke to Dan. Sil instantly started loudly crying and ripping up the fake rental papers into tiny bits and tossing them like confetti. Only to have an officer tell them to pick up the bits of paper, or he'd cite them for littering. Both of the cops, at this point, had the "I don't get paid enough for this" look on their faces. Dan had to start telling his kids to load their stuff back into the moving truck. The kids were all crying, and the eldest was sobbing about cops because they'd likely not try anything foolish. Then my mother just started crying and walking away. My father just stood there looking like he wanted to hit me, and Dan just held his kids in defeat. Oh, and S was off having a tantrum on my front lawn. Soon enough, they all formed a line, handed out boxes, and got their stuff from my house. Nothing had been unpacked yet, so it was taken out quickly. But while doing it, my mother kept saying it wasn't too late and I could still become a part of who they were. My mother buried her face in my father's jacket to cry, and my father looked more defeated than I'd ever seen him. Dan and his family avoided me entirely as they finished putting everything back in the moving truck. I ensured nothing was stolen, not that I'd had a chance to get much furniture. I was lucky even to have a couch at that time. They all returned to their vehicles, and S stood staring at me with malice. Until my brother finally got her to have her fourth baby in November, she was posting the same repetitive nonsense over and over again. She just found semi-ever ways of rewarding it. But she kept regurgitating that she was tired of living with my parents. That there isn't enough space, she needs her own house, blah blah blah. I sound dismissive, but live through what I have with these people, and you'd be ready to play tiny violins in front of them, too sarcastically. They're just that bad, and since I waited until January to it was petty of me, but I loudly pointed out that she sucks as a mother, because she lets my mother do most of the parenting while she sits on her butt all day, drinking, playing on her phone, or going out and spending all of her dancing money, and she has the nerve to complain about it. I even joke that I'm surprised her baby doesn't get drunk from her breast milk since she drinks so much booze, which I admit went a bit too far as I got some stares, and S demanded to know if I was calling her a bad mom. I've not posted anything since then. She loves to complain, but can it still complain if a tree falls and no one hears it? I guess S has realized there's no point in doing it when no one hears her anymore, and Dan can't afford to move his family out on his salary alone anytime soon. If they end up expecting another child in the next few years, I won't be surprised things have mellowed down for me since then, and I've even invited friends over for a poker night. I suck at PPR because I can never laugh at myself for being homeless, or should we go further back to my childhood? I'd love to delve into that with plenty of ears to listen, and around us. My mother grabbed my hand and begged me not to speak of any of it. My father and Dan both just looked away and said nothing, pretty sure they wanted to say something like they used to at me, but held their tongues. I asked them if they thought I was rich or something, and their look said it all, and when I told them I didn't have that kind of money, the meal was finished. Dan left $10 on the table for the tip and walked off without saying another word to me or anyone. My mother excused his behavior, and we all parted ways. That was about it. There was not nearly as much drama as I thought. But this is still far better than how things used to be with my parents and brother. As for S, she's been regularly complaining online about my parents. She doesn't seem to like the fact that she's not the queen bee of their house, and I think hers adjoining bathroom that would have left only 2 small rooms for Dan S and 4 kids. Not to mention they'd be annoying AF to me all the time. Also she knows very well I can't be around S, because she intentionally distressed me, and they all mocked me when I was homeless. Besides, my current tenants are both single guys in their 30s. I got along with my mother and had some sobbing excuses for a while, but she finally let it go and admitted she was just desperate. Edit, my parents found out I was redone in the past, but I have a little faith they're at least trying because my parents came to my house without Dan to personally apologize after seeing an animated video of my first 3 posts. That's right, they've known about this Reddit account for a long time. Now they also know everything I'm saying. Yes, they're unhappy about it, but I feel everyone here deserves an update. Since it's for my parents and Dan, I thought watching animated videos of themselves and their actions was part of growing up. Update 5, Part 2, so that everyone understands, a lot of this information came from Dan and my parents, so I'm just telling what I know hit the fan when Dan suddenly called out his wife as a cheater. March, this shocked us all because we thought he was a complete pushover to her, but no, he's not, at least not anymore. You all know how he treated me when I was on his bad side. Well, his wife wasn't spared that at all. He started putting pieces together about her deceit after he told her I'd got all it on my doorbell camera. She started panicking the moment she heard the camera. Then, I ended up verbally savaging her to the point she was backing off my porch. I told her she had some GE to call me entitled when she said she didn't work for anything. She had any more cheated on her husband and got pregnant from her affair partner, made my mother do most of the parenting for her children, spent Dan's money till they were in a financial hole and acted entitled to my home to financially backed into a corner very badly. Do you know what can happen when you corner an animal? She fought back. But the law was not on her side, nor were her finances dwindling. S's parents had to pay for a lawyer for her, which was not very good either. Also, she brought her fair partner to the divorce court to testify on her behalf. This guy was a real work. He had a bronze tongue and a charming smile he tried to use to his advantage. He claimed an income had wronged S. He did love his wife a lot, so the betrayal of her cheating made him hit the bottle hard. Rewind to the night of his confrontation with his wife. He came to me in a store with a whiskey bottle in hand and his face all scratched up and covered in bandages. I wouldn't say he was drunk yet, but I freaked out seeing him looking like that at first, then scolded him for driving under the influence. But that didn't mean much to him compared to the betrayal of his cheating harlot of ends up for the boy's half of the room. But the boy often slept on the couch to avoid his sisters. I know the poor kid was desperate for his room, so Dan finally decided to make a better decision as a dad and came to see me beg to borrow my camper. So his son could have his room. If he could have afforded it, he'd have bought his camper instead of relying on me, and even said as much as I hadn't even gotten the chance to use it for actual camping yet. But I caved an E for a long time. Now for the last part, at the same time as the divorce. Dan sued to have his name removed from the birth certificate of the baby that wasn't his. That shit didn't want to change it because it meant no more child support from Dan as she did. However, there was a court-ordered paternity test for the man identified as the baby's father. I was prepared to laugh in case he wasn't the father either. But he was, and Dan's lawyer had a long talk with his ex's lawyer. Exile had ever done despite being their mother, she just weaponized her children and pregnancy to keep from working and to blackmail everyone emotionally. Then he asked her to remind him how that was working for her. Mind you, this was early on in their divorce, and I'm sure you can all guess her reaction. Dan said his ex had quite a tantrum about my recent posts. Still, no one has bothered to contact me on her behalf to take them down, so she has to live with a well-deserved shame. She has been trying to act not to get her car spotted on camera or something. It wouldn't surprise me if she questioned whether it was worth the effort. Oh well, I guess I'll wait and see if Edgar comes back next year. I did hand out printed pictures of the Edgar, though, and even stapled a few up on posts, so now people in my neighborhood are aware. At least the tenants renting out 2 rooms in my house have stayed out of it, and I don't blame them. It's not their problem.